Wonderkids are the lifeblood of football and Football Manager, but where does FM hide the best ones? Well, Ukraine. That's the 20th best Wonderkid producing country in the entire game, based off two things. Well, two categories. Your objective facts, which are things like youth rating, which is assigned by Football Manager into the game. Ukraine is rocking a youth rating at 110, and game importance, which is the level of importance the game has in that country. It peaks at very important. Ukraine's is important. Then there are these subjective factors. This includes average price of purchasing a Wonderkid, based off my personal experience, which is a lot of experience. I don't go outside. And of course, number of high-level clubs available to develop these players. If you can find nations that are really good in all four of these things, that's how you get on this list, really. And Ukraine's 110 youth rating, important game importance, and really solid domestic league produce a decent amount of Wonderkids. That means you should be paying attention there. But they're not as good as the other 19 on this list. Honestly, they might be, though. I just went to the youth national team and found this guy. I'm in 2030 in my save that I'm streaming on Twitch and the Zealand Live YouTube channel, and I think I'm gonna go sign this guy. I'll be right back. The 19th best Wonderkid producing nation in the game is Belgium. Now, Belgium has one of these subjective factors working against it pretty hard. Belgian players are usually going to be way more expensive than their counterpart players that are at other areas. And even though there are good clubs in Belgium, they're not going to give you a huge boost on those players you're trying to get at 18 or 19. But in the objective factors, Belgium's doing pretty good. It has a youth rating of 120 and very important game importance, which obviously almost every country is going to have, so just assume that's there unless I say otherwise. The problem for Belgium and the reason that it's not ranked higher is because the level of Wonderkids it's producing does not validate how expensive they are and how difficult they might be to acquire, because they're not that much better than a lot of the other teams we're going to see on this list, whose Wonderkids are typically way more accessible. But look, they already made the top 20. I mean, it's not a bad thing to be in the top 20. Checking in at number 18, Turkey. Turkey has the same problem, to an even bigger extent. Turkey not only has a lot of clubs that are going to charge you a serious amount of money to buy their Wonderkids, they drive up the wages of those Wonderkids as well, making them even more inaccessible when you're trying to get them. But Turkey does have some good objective measures. It checks in at a youth rating of 124, and of course, has a lot of clubs that offer pretty good development, but very few are going to offer super elite, fantastic development. The wage structure of the Turkish league is just really elevated compared to the actual level of the players, and that makes it really difficult to justify ranking Turkey any higher on this list. Even though it is producing a good number of Wonderkids, they're just not accessible unless you're at an incredibly high level of the game. That being said, I might be at that level. Even Konyaspor is charging me 15 million for this guy. I don't know. The 17th best nation to find Wonderkids in is Iran. And Iran is an inversion of what you're going to see in Turkey. Not entirely, though. Iran could be higher. Now, the youth rating in Iran is 110. But it's got two things going for it on the subjective side. You're not going to get any overly expensive purchases going after Iranian Wonderkids, and it has a good number of clubs that have pretty good facilities. There's a decent amount of money in the Iranian league. It's a very large country with a lot of internal investment and very important game importance. Now, there's one part of that subjectivity that hurts, though, and that is the wages. Because of that, they don't charge huge transfer fees. Even this guy, Abbas Jahangiri, who is clearly a fantastic Wonderkid that I already tried to sign once, he didn't want to play for me. He decided to re-sign a contract with Tractor SC because they were able to offer him more of a wage. These guys' wages are usually pretty dang high by the time you're getting your hand on them, unless you're, of course, at your PSG Manchester City level, but this isn't necessarily for you. Although it kind of also is, because you should be looking in Iran. The youth rating is top 20, and there are a couple of guys at this level knocking around at all times. You got to get to them when they're 18 years old, though, because they're not going to get the top level development playing in the Iranian league. So every year after that, kind of just wasting their ability to develop. I couldn't do anything about that, though, because he literally rejected me. The 16th best Wonderkid producing nation is South Korea. Also checking in with a youth rating of 110, but a game importance of just important. So why South Korea? Because the clubs are at a higher level. and they're able to develop the players better while not dramatically increasing the amount of money that you have to pay to get those players. There is a very consistent pricing structure around South Korean Wonderkids in this game. Like this guy, Jin Sung-min, in my save, has ended up at Napoli. They purchased him from Daegu FC for 1.7 million. He's now worth 55 to 83 million. That is a very cheap purchase. And you're purchasing from better clubs that are in Iran again. So these guys are able to develop more aggressively before you get your hands on them. It's held back, obviously, by the fact that it only has important game importance and a 110 youth rating. At 15 is Mexico. Probably maybe a little lower than you would have expected, but the Mexican national team's underperformance has hampered their youth rating just a little bit. But don't get it twisted, Mexico can still produce some absolutely fantastic players in Football Manager. Just in 2030, there are already 5 new-gen players that have cracked into the Mexican team, including this absolute god-tier player named Jesus Rodriguez, who I am currently willing to sell my 3 eldest children in order to sign. They haven't replied to the transfer offer yet, but I'm optimistic. They also have a guy named Gandhi. For some reason. He plays for Arsenal's U21s, though, so I don't know if he counts. I'm gonna go ahead and scout up a few of these guys for my save. But Mexico has some very distinct and almost unique disadvantages here. Their youth rating is 120, and that is good. They have a lot of clubs that are able to develop players up to, I would say, the championship level. The Mexican league is a good league, but it's a huge country in the same way that Turkey is, that spends a lot of money on the game. They're not going to be able to charge the same sorts of fees on the transfer fees, but they will drive up the wages insanely. Like, look at this guy. He's playing for Guadalajara. His wage, even though I only have a range, is 2.3 to 3.7 million per year. But the reason Mexico ends up ahead of Turkey and breaks the top 15 is because those transfer fees don't go nuts, right? There's $13.5 million. You can get Jesus Rodriguez as long as you can afford the wage. At number 14, Japan. The hard-charging, emerging power of world football that now has a very good league system that is producing better and better players. It's one of the best Asian leagues you're going to be able to get your hands on now, and so that offers solid developmental opportunities for these young players. Japan's checking in with a youth rating of 112, just a little bit higher than Iran, Ukraine, and South Korea. With a very important game importance, a slightly better league, and really no serious damage done to the available transfer fees and wage budgets of these players, Japan is an incredibly fertile Wonderkid harvesting area. Look at this guy. I've got this guy on my short list right now. My save, $5 million price tag, hard locked. A lot of release clauses coming out of Japan with a wage that is under $300,000 per year. And even with this skill level, he's still not a full-time first-team player in the J1 league. So, I mean, that gives you a pretty good idea of the level that this league is able to compete at, and that really aids player development. At number 13, Egypt. Now, this has been a sleeper nation in Football Manager for a long time. Football Manager loves Egypt. They've been giving them high youth ratings for a while, but Egypt has not really been that good in Football Manager in spite of that, because their league isn't in the game and it just doesn't offer the ability to develop players in a good way. Now Egypt's league is in the game. So the fact that Egypt's got a great youth rating, checking in at 125, which is higher than Turkey, Mexico, and Belgium, by the way. I know that sounds insane, but it is true. Football Manager rates Egyptian youth development incredibly highly. The issue now for Egypt is that there are really only a few elite clubs like Al Ahly in Egypt that can develop these guys, but they still give you players like this. In my save, Al Mu'tasim Yasser, who's already broken in to be the starting striker on the Egyptian national team at 18 years of age. Now, the wage does get driven up a fair bit, which is why Egypt is as low as it is, because those, same issue you run into in Mexico and Turkey. This is a very large country that is very invested in this sport, and so the wages of those players are going to reflect that. So this is not a super cheap Wonderkid hunting ground like the next nation on our list. And the 12th best Wonderkid nation in the world, according to Football Manager, is USA, the United States. There is a very simple, obvious reason for that. The United States and all of the Wonderkids held within are free. Almost all of them are completely free with depressed wages. The unique way the United States youth system is set up means that almost all of their Wonderkids are in academies. And MLS clubs typically don't have the roster space to bring guys out of their academies. It happens rarely, or they go through the draft. This means if you keep an eye on the US, you can find a bunch of free guys that are worth a ton of money. Let me show you a great example. This is my current squad in my save that is on Twitch and Zealand Live, right? I signed this guy, Ty Noonan, for free. He was completely free playing with the St. Louis City Academy team, which is amateur level. He is now valued at $38 to $51 million with great potential, and I'm sure a lot of you would love to have this type of player, particularly in the lower leagues. Like if you're looking at the US youth national teams, you are gonna find a lot of these guys that can literally come in and change your save overnight. And they're not all non-EU either. A lot of the guys playing down at that level are gonna have a second nationality. That's just the nature of the US. Like here, for example, is a pretty solid wonder kid I'd had on my short lists in the past named Shitaro Wada, who is obviously also Japanese. So if you're in the J League, you can find a guy like Shitaro Wada and all of a sudden he's like a domestic player. There's that for basically everybody. And it's not just American players in these academies. There are Canadians, there are Ghanaians, there are Ivorians, and there is an actual precedent for this in real life. This is not like wholly unrealistic. Just look at Jan Diomande, who has recently broken into the Ivorian national team and become a big money guy. He was playing high school soccer in the US 2 years ago. And it's that diversity of nationality in these academies that makes the US such a complicated place to scout. It's definitely worth going there, but its youth rating on its own is 110. So you're in some ways dependent on those other nationalities that are coming in through those academies and also free to make the US 12 on this list. But the fact that they're all free and all just sitting there is just hard to beat. But it still doesn't make it better than Nigeria, who's come in at number 11 in our Wonder Kid rankings. Nigeria is coming with a 120 youth rating, but where Nigeria wins out against Turkey and against Egypt, who are ahead of Nigeria in terms of the youth rating, is Nigeria's league doesn't boost the wage and it doesn't boost the transfer fees. You can get these guys for release clauses typically under $1 million, which is literally what I have done with 20-year-old goalkeeper Edidiong Ekpo. And if you ignore the fact that he's short, he's a world-class shot-stopping goalkeeper that I think most people would be very happy to have. I have also, if we've assessed my squad, signed Victor Habib, who is a La Liga-ready player from Kano Pillars for $325,000. And there's also guys like Joe Usman, who went to Benfica, and his values, they signed him for $750,000. He's now valued at $50 million. I wish I found him. That would have been nice. Now, Nigeria's been juiced up in Football Manager now, and it's producing a lot of talent out of that league. Definitely a league you want to keep your eyes on, but not good enough to crack the top 10. And at number 10 is a nation you probably didn't expect to be this low. England. I know, but look, England's youth rating is only 135. It is only 10 points higher than Egypt. Where England dominates is it has so many clubs available to, for loans and just general player development that all of the players, every English player basically has every ounce of quality and talent squeezed out of them, right? There's no choice. You've got 6 leagues playable in the game alone. You got basically 5 professional leagues at this point in the English pyramid. There is so much opportunity for player development. It is unbelievable. The obvious downside is that the wages are just so inflated as a result of that in England. You really don't end up signing a lot of players from England typically most of the time because, one, there's unbelievable competition from other English clubs to sign those players, and their wages are driven up in a way that if you're outside of the English pyramid system, you can't justify that wage for that level of player. But because England is one of the countries that is in the top 10 when it comes to being able to produce players and obviously produces and maintains an unbelievable national team through the game, it would feel weird to have England lower than 10. But England certainly isn't in the upper echelon of Football Manager when it comes to youth rating and the objective stuff either. It's kind of unique in a way because the leagues allow them to just squeeze juice out of a stone eventually. But England ends up behind maybe my favorite Wonder Kid nation, Colombia. Often overlooked and typically forgotten with a youth rating of 117 that's very, very solid, the Colombian league very consistently produces superstar level players because it's able to compete in Libertadores and has a host of good clubs over a 2-league system in Football Manager that can develop players that have very low asking prices and very low wage demands. Like this guy, Gabriel Rivera, was signed for $2.3 million by Cruzeiro in Brazil. He agreed to go there instead of deciding to play for me, a fact that I have not really gotten over. But if you find a normal Wonder Kid hanging out at Atletico Nacional, you'll normally see an asking price that looks something like this. And when you get one of those asking prices, you can put 250, 500,000 down, put some installments, some after 50 match appearances, and you can get these guys to come join your team basically right away. And I don't know if it's something hard-coded in the game or not, but Colombia is one of those countries that develops more well-rounded footballers, while if you get Americans or Nigerians or some, Egyptians, they usually are way better at a few things and not as well-rounded. Like, they don't have the whole technical base of the game. In Colombia, that seems to be more frequent. I've never been able to find out if that's just confirmation bias or what, but it feels like it. Colombia is far and away the third best South American nation when it comes to Wonder Kid development. But they don't crack the top 8. Number 8 for our Wonder Kid rankings, the Netherlands. This is where we take a step up. Like, there is a clear top 8 for me when it comes to these rankings, and the Netherlands checking in at 8. And the Netherlands produces fantastic players. I've got a couple of them shortlisted, including this guy, Aymar Kayembe. He plays for NEC, which is a great example of the fact that a lot of Dutch clubs can produce and bring through these Wonder Kids. They've got great facilities, great clubs, including a couple of, world-class ones like Feyenoord, PSV, Ajax, obviously, that can bring these players up. The problem is, because of their European involvement, because of the level of the league, the asking price is damn high. Now, on the flip side of that, the wage demands are not bad. You are not going to be spending even Mexico or Turkey level wages to get these guys in. You just have to be able to get to them very early, or else that asking price is going to rocket up. But yeah, 132 on the youth rating, clear 8. In 7th, we go to Portugal. Portugal's got an advantage that the Netherlands doesn't. It's right next to it in youth rating, 134 for Portugal, but Portugal's got a much deeper league system than the 2-level professional Dutch league system. This means there's a lot more clubs that Wonder Kids can appear at that make them more cheap than the Netherlands. There are also, of course, sensational clubs like Benfica, Sporting, Porto, where you can get your bona fide world-class Wonder Kids coming through all the time. The latest example in my game being this guy, Elder Martins, who's already in the Portuguese national team. Now, the asking price for these guys is still pretty bad, right? If they're on Porto, Benfica, Sporting, you're going to see 60 to 70 million if you're not early. If you find somebody else in the youth national team that's maybe a little more accessible, I mean, look at this guy on my short list, 66 to 101 million. So you better hope they're coming in at one of those lower clubs, because the asking price of players in Portugal can go really, really, really high. And the youth rating just doesn't provide enough players for you to get around that, at least for them to be higher on this list. At number 6, Italy. Now, this is where we take another very big step up. Italy's youth rating is 144, which for reference is 9 higher than England. And obviously, Italy has a great 3-tier system with a ton of clubs, particularly in Serie C, that offer professional football to help develop these players. I mean, we're reaching the level where we're consistently in these bona fide world-class environments with, every one of these leagues at this point. But where does Italy lose? Well, the asking prices are Big 5 league level, right? Italy is going to have massive asking prices unless you can find players that are happening to come in at one of those smaller leagues, and you also have the competition of other Italian clubs trying to sign them. This is going to be a recurring issue for all of those countries that are, in the Big 5, basically. And Italy just has the lower youth rating when it comes to all that. But the mid-level Italian clubs can give you release clauses, like this guy who's working with a $17.5 million release clause. His wage is just, potentially over $2 million a year. So it's not all gravy. Now time for the top 5. The 5 best Wonder Kid producing nations in Football Manager. And number 5 is Spain. Spain, for one reason or another, has ended up just 1 point ahead of Italy when it comes to the youth rating in the game at just 145, which is a whole hop, skip, and a jump away from what's going to end up being our top 3. Now, Spain's advantage over Italy is that it has a massive 5-league table 4th division that offers almost exclusively professional football. It's incredible for the development of the players. But on the flip side, ton of competition from the top 2 divisions to sign those Wonder Kids and bring them up. You're going to get big asking prices and pretty reasonably sized wages as well when you're working with that. And the B team system that exists in Spain is pretty elite, and that means a lot of Wonder Kids get hoovered up by Barcelona's B team, Real Madrid's B team, Valencia's B team, whatever. There are a lot of B teams around, so the big clubs can hoard wealth a little bit. But obviously, Spain producing good players is not a surprise. They're the reigning European champions. It's perhaps more of a surprise that they are at number 5. Number 4, Argentina. Argentina's domestic league is in financial shambles. But the good news for you is that Argentina is still a huge country that has big clubs with great facilities to develop Wonderkids and produce Wonderkids and find Wonderkids. And it has a very high youth rating of 140, which is nearly as high as Italy and Spain. But it does that in a way where its Wonderkids are incredibly accessible. The wage, because of the financial issues, is simply just not that high. And the highest you'll see the demands for transfers really don't go over like 13 million. And they'll typically hang out in this range of like $6 to $7 million. But because the wage is so agreeable, it's a little easier to come up with that money. And this is a country that very consistently is going to be producing world-class potential Ballon d'Or players if you can get them signed and get them into your club to start developing. You can see how many of these guys are on my short list right now. The only clubs you're really not going to be wanting to sign for are like River Plate, because once they get those guys, they're kind of, you get a 29 to 43 million. But the thing is, for a similar player, that's still a significantly less amount of money than you would have to pay in the nations, in Italy and Spain, for a youth rating that's going to be at about the same level. But there is a gap between Argentina and the top 3. In third, Germany. Germany has the 3rd best Wonderkid engine in all of Football Manager, and it's obvious. They've got 3 leagues that are fully professional all the way down to the Dry Liga, I believe the 3rd Bundesliga. But the real difference maker is Germany's rocking a youth rating of 155, right? So if you're going to be looking for Big 5 nations, Wonderkids that you're finding on smaller teams down in the 3rd division, down in the 2nd division of the Bundesliga that are going to be a little more affordable, Germany's a place you're going to want to go because there's just going to be more of them. I mean, Germany's youth rating at 155 is a whole 20 points higher than England, for example. It is 11 points higher than Italy and 10 higher than Spain. It's a huge jump up. Actually going to scout this guy. This guy's been called up to the German national team, but his value is still 9 to 12 million. See, you just look for the gaps. You look for these guys that they're going to be producing a ton of really fantastic players, and there's going to be some of them that are slipping through the gaps to be accessible. But you're going to deal with all the big money, big wage stuff that you have to deal with in all of these top countries, especially when you're getting up towards the bigger teams. But Germany doesn't have over-the-top wages. Neither does our 2nd best nation, France. France is also checking in with a rating of 155. The reason that I'm putting France ahead of Germany is France has more professional teams in the game that these players can spawn in at, and that obviously gives you more of an opportunity to find these players before the big French teams happen to wander into them. I mean, the asking prices can obviously be ridiculous, like this 17-year-old watching Idaro at Saint Etienne. It's already valued 41 to 50 million. You have to be opportunistic. You have to be aggressive when opportunities present themselves, like this guy, Nabil Bellaribi. Looks like a good player. Well, I'm going to scout him. It's actually a good scouting exercise for me. But I mean, it's France. France and Germany in a league of their own ahead of England, Spain, and Italy when it comes to being able to produce these players. In France, they just give you more room to find them. But the number 1 Wonderkid producing nation is still, and it is so not close, Brazil. Brazil's youth rating is 8 higher than any other nation in the game. It's 163. And Brazil has a very deep league system in the game that allows these guys to spawn in all over the place. And of course, most importantly, they dominate in the subjective aspects too. That's what makes this so not close. The biggest Brazilian teams can demand 30, maybe in a Neymar-esque situation, 40 million, but you are, especially if you're a particularly big club, always going to be able to afford the Wonderkids coming out of Brazil. Really, the only thing that hurts is that good Brazilian Wonderkids usually do know how good they are. And the reason that is important is because guys like this, who's playing for Bragantino, is 17-year-old, valued 15 to 24 million, right? They're not going to sign for scrub teams. They're only going to move over to Europe for big teams. This is a result of a lot of the teams in Brazil having pretty high reputation. So the way the game works, they don't want to leave a club that has more reputation for a club that has less reputation. But considering they have a youth rating of 163, a ton of clubs to develop those players, very high game importance, Brazil's still the king, and it's not close. But the real fun, cheap deals and fun nationalities are in the first half of this list. So I hope it's helped you. I'll see you on stream, where I might be using a few of these guys, perhaps.